peace in 3 days, the Prison Break series and the swift hand of the law. Also tonight, around the mountain to the coast and back, the courtship and the insults. Plus, is Oka still okay? The suspicions and the all too familiar coalition tales. And all hail Madam Governor, the Sonko City joke that went too far, or did it? On the memo tonight, a parental manual. The Shuri's punchline has a Bible verse for the devolution conference. On the kicker, the union killer of Kenya, who will come to their rescue. The judge and the Sonko leaks are on Yvonne's stake. And on the angle tonight, the free pass for economic terrorists. Why?
Kilomita kama 4 au 5 kutoka kwa bwawa la Ngamba, tuliwapata wamekaa mahali chini wakiwa watatu. Tukafanikiwa kushika moja, wawili wakatoroka. Tukashika huyo moja, tukamweka pingu, tukaitisha Probox. Probox ikakuja na akarudi na koplo moja kwa KPR ambaye hakuwa na sare rasmi za kazi.
Received information yesterday that 3 suspicious characters have been found within Motito, linked to Malalani, and after we received that information, every other area was activated. Everybody was put on alert. Unfortunately, this morning, in East County, the security team there managed to arrest.
All right, Wilson Mushora is the 6th gangster here, helping us with the sign language interpretation. And that gentleman that you saw before, the prisons of officials and the security agencies and everybody else, is a man who says that he gave the lead to the 3 convicts who have since been recaptured. But ladies and gentlemen, a very dramatic last couple of days. We've seen so many things happen in such a short time. But all in all, a relief, Linus, because the thought of having 3 convicted terrorists somewhere in this country was not that settling to many people.
A huge sigh of relief for the country, actually, because this was not good news. In many ways, it painted the country's security system in very bad light. First of all, showing that it is so easy to actually lose such a high security prisoner or convict just to thin air. That was not good. It was going to be a very, very bad picture for the country. And there should be a very huge sigh of relief. And talking of the discovery of these convicts in Mwingi, there has to be a legitimate discussion as to whether Paul Mwaniki and the team in the fields of Mwingi do qualify for the 60 million bounty that was promised by the security services. They had said that, give us information that will lead to the arrest of these 3. And information has been provided showing that they have been arrested and they are back in committee. So I think the 60 million should be a very short discussion and in the interest of future such operations. But there's something else that must be said, Joe, about the events in the last few days. Something about the human resource capacity in this country. The capacity of the security apparatus as well to actually fix things. I know for the next few days and maybe going forward, there'll be this debate between the problem that first of all led to the escape of these convicts, but there should be also a very good discussion as to how these 3 were quickly caught, because it says something that may quietly be working about our security. And I just want us to listen to Paul Mwaniki when he speaks there about fearing or about calling for backup. Let's listen to Paul Mwaniki here.
Hata ile kitu tulikuwa tunaogopa sana, tulikuwa tunaogopa vita kutoka external kutoka nje, kwa sababu wale tulikuwa tumeona wametoroka na wana bunduki. Ile kitu tulikuwa tunaogopa kama wanaweza piga simu walete reinforcement. Hiyo ndio kitu tulikuwa tunaogopa, kwa sababu sisi tulikuwa na bunduki mbili tu. Wala askari ule mmoja wakati alienda na ule jamaa tulishika wa kwanza, tulibaki na bunduki mbili. Sasa ile wasiwasi tulikuwa nayo ni kuwa tungepata external attack ndio tungestamili, lakini wale tulikuwa tumeona venye wametoroka wana bunduki, kwa sababu walitoroka mpaka wakaacha viatu. Tuliwauliza maswali. Kama kijana huyu niliuliza, huyu wa kwanza nilimuuliza, aliniambia alitoroka Kamiti. Huyu mwingine ambaye ni Msomali kabisa aliniambia hata kuna uwezekano kuna wakati mmoja alikuwa anaishi Nairobi na Mombasa. Alikuwa ananiambia afadhali kufa kushinda mateso anayopitia.
Look at the preliminary questioning that has been done by a villager. It's sounding like an investigator. He's asked all the basic information. Where are you from? Where are you going? I've escaped from prison and etc. This has been an impressive, very, very impressive display by the villagers in Mwingi, Joe.
And I think the question that will be asked, it is clear that the capacity is there for us to do these things the way that this one has happened, and yet there are many crimes that remain unresolved so many years later. And I think the factors that led to this swift action by police, I think, is something that will be the subject of a huge debate, because we've seen many cases in this country that go unresolved for years, things that sometimes look very clear where they may have come from, but at the end of the day, we'll be talking about 5 years, 6 years, 10 years down the road, and nothing happened. So was it pressure? Was it 60 million? Jamila is raising her hand.
Pressure, 60 million, or just trying to sort of like feature aibu, in my opinion, because of how these 3 suspects escaped from Kamiti maximum security prison on Sunday. There were a lot of questions that were raised.
Supposed to be the most secure
in the
prison.
country. Yes, security. And these gentlemen were all convicted terrorists. They were serving sentences of up to almost 41 years in prison. So these were people who were going to be in prison for a very long time. And then come Sunday evening, they remove a brick from the wall. They use blankets to make a rope. They pass through that opening that they created. They go almost a kilometer from where their cell block was all the way to where the wall was, and they're able to leave. There was a chisel that was found at the scene, and investigations show that the chisel was used both inside and outside the cell. That's one. 2, how were they able to leave? Kamiti Maximum Security Prison is in the middle of this huge expanse of land, and for them to leave their cell all the way to the gate is almost a kilometer, I'm informed. Number 2, the fact that now there's supposed to have been CCTV in that place, and there should be officers 24 hours manning CCTV cameras, the screens there. And how were they unable not to see anything at all, considering that the chisel that was apparently found there was worn? It was one that had been used for a long period of time. It sounds like something we see in movies. Those who've watched a movie called Shawshank Redemption would actually relate to what I'm saying. But it's like it's the chisel that was used like for a while. This is something that has taken a while for it to be done, and no one noticed. Yes, there was the drama at Magereza House yesterday when senior officials were called and arrested afterwards. 16 officers have so far been arraigned in court, 7 the day before yesterday, 3 yesterday, and 6 today. And of course, some of them are going to be remanded for 25 days as investigations continue. But I think the swiftness of what we've seen, the zeal that we've seen, I think is partly because of that.
And part of the 16 you're talking about actually are the people who are manning the CCTV cameras.
Yes.
Because they probably have a few questions to answer. How come they didn't see anything? Yvonne?
Yeah, and just to talk about, what happened so swiftly thereafter. I mean, this is part of the statement that came from the president right after that, just before we saw the arrest, particularly of the senior-most officials within the prison service. And he said, the Department of Correctional Services has been directed to sanction disciplinary action against all Kenya Prison Service personnel who are on duty when the breaches happened, and some of the actions shall include redeployment and/or immediate suspension of all affected officers. I mean, this is a pretty, strong statement, and right after that we saw, one person being, being fired, others being hired almost immediately. So it is possible in this country, to be able to make swift changes. And if, like you say, in Kuficha Aibu, hopefully we find other crimes like corruption equally shameful enough for us to take swift action. For me, it just showed that it is possible in this country to get things done if the will is there. But I have to say, this escape couldn't have come at a worse time. When you take a look at security, not just in the country, but in the region. So this escape happens just around the time that we saw the twin blast attacks in Kampala, Uganda, which, by the way, has been a series. I think there were 2 or 3 prior to that in a very short span of time. And then seeing what's happening in Ethiopia with the crisis from the north in Tigray. And then you have all of these, these escapees who are, by the way, not standing trial. They're convicted of terror activities. And then right on the eve of the arrival of the U.S. Secretary of State, it could not get more shameful, more frightening, more scary than that at this time. And then coupled with the very swift changes that we saw at the helm of the prison service, and then what, 2-3 days later, they've been found. I mean, hooray, this is pretty swift in this country. But then now, I'm starting to ask myself, well, how else can we apply this approach?
The Gazette notices.
This Gazette notices, right? At night, people being so, oh yeah, we've done that, and sworn people in the next day. Yes. So, I mean, clearly we can do it. And so, we see what happens next. But obviously something needs to be said, yeah.
Francis, let's keep hope alive.
Absolutely. And we have every reason to do that because when news broke that these 3 terror convicts had escaped, it was obviously a scare for everyone. Yeah. Kenya has experienced terror attacks previously. Lives have been lost, property destroyed, people maimed. There are people whose lives changed totally, completely, as a result of what we saw at Westgate, at Dusit, at Kikambala, what we saw at the bomb blast in 1997. So, I mean, there are very many reasons why everybody was to get scared when we had news that these guys had escaped. Of course, Kenyans are distrusting of the security agencies. And that's why already you can hear murmurs about whether Paul Mwaneki is a villager, is a police officer. All those stories, you'll hear them. Already there is pessimism, and you would probably understand where it's coming from. But suffice to say, this country has some of the best trained security officers in the region. And even in terms of intelligence, our country is way, way high. However, sometimes it doesn't work, sometimes it works. But I would say, when the government is really interested in pursuing something, it can. If it is interested in nabbing somebody, it can. If it is interested in dealing with a certain situation, it can. We've seen some very complex investigations completed sufficiently and satisfactorily in this country. And we have seen some that have seemed simple, but have dragged on for years. So it tells that if there is political goodwill, if there is willingness from the very top level, things can happen. So the same swiftness, as you say, Yvonne, and I agree with you 100%. I wish it was the same swiftness that we see when we're dealing with graft, when we are dealing with mismanagement of public resources, when we are dealing with lack of basic service delivery, when we see of cases that are delayed in court. Murders. Yeah, when you have seen some cases delayed in court for years on end, So if there is that willingness to deal with certain situations, it can be dealt with. So on this one, totally agreed. It was good action.
All right, great.
See, just a quick note here, because we need to interpret what we are seeing as well, because these 3 escaped just a few weeks after Masten Wanjala, you remember, escaped from
that's right.
the Jogoo Road police station.
Yeah.
There's something this is telling us also as a country. There is a problem of values in the country, because when you see people walking out of a high security facility like that, whether it's a police station or committee maximum security prison, it means that has possibly been facilitated. It just tells us that in this country, there is nothing that doesn't have a price these days. And that should worry us a lot. Because if there is the decay at the top, when you see all these billions going to waste through corruption, and then impunity, no action is really taken, it shouldn't surprise us that then even an ordinary warder can actually decide, oh, at what price do you want this man out? And I'm just speculating here, but it's a pointer to how bad things can go. And I think we have gotten a taste of it. I like the fact that this totally scared everybody, whether it's security or even ordinary people like Francis Gashuru, who is always courageous. Yeah. He is very, very... From Banana, he's totally worried about 3 terrorists that were heading out to Somalia, because we know this is bad, this is wrong, this is low, this is a statement about a broken system.
Joe, there was something about a broken system. I was listening to Hassan Mugambi's story, and he mentioned that these gentlemen were found with a GPRS device, one that is typically used by...
That's what they were using.
Yeah, by security personnel to walk eastwards towards Mwingi so they could get into Boni Forest. Now once wakingia huko ni kupotea kaende. Yeah, and Moniki was talking about how even the phones that they had were thrown somewhere in the bush, in the melee when they were being arrested. I think maybe that's something the security officers need to look at. If these guys actually had that device, ambayo alikuwa anaonyesha how to go, and they walked for 100 kilometers.
I mean, they were saying they walked in a straight line, and they were always heading east because they had an idea where Somalia is, and it is actually believed that they were walking at night and then resting during the day. Yes. And that is fascinating. And Linus, the truth of the matter is that, I mean, matters are before court, yes, but the truth of the matter is that whoever it is, there's someone who helped those people. I mean, there's no way you just walk out of Kamiti.
Absolutely.
And all of that drilling and everything that was happening, how did nobody hear that?
Joe.
And it wasn't a one-night affair. Exactly. Some of those things could have happened over a long period of time. For you to basically chisel your way into a house, it's not something you can just do in a few minutes.
Joe, my basic understanding of Kamiti prison is that all prisoners are not lumped together. They're kept depending on the level of crime, or the kind of crime that you committed, or the level of conviction. So terror suspects cannot have been in the same block with chicken thieves, for example, or let's say touts who are arrested for touting or something like that, or hawkers who are arrested in the streets of Nairobi or elsewhere. So if they were in block A, as we are being told, this is the high-level block. So I would imagine there are 3-4 layers of security on those high walls. So how they managed to scale those walls, the first one, the second one, and walked out unnoticed with all those control towers that we see when you are around Kahawa West, when you're on Mogumo Roiro Road. I mean, those are high masts that you see, and they're always manned every day when you pass around there. So that they escaped without no one noticing, it reads, looks, smells, collusion. And that collusion is, of course, aided by money. So hopefully, now that they have been recaptured, they will get to explain a few things about how they managed to escape and who facilitated them. Those are some of the things that Kenyans should know, because it cannot convince anyone that those guys just walked out and left. Never.
That would be more scary, actually. Never. I think we need to move on swiftly, take a break, because when we come back, we'll be going to the mountain and other places, because politics is only just beginning, it would seem, but we still have a couple of months before the election.